Ho ho! It's Father Christmas here, with a phlegm. I am delivering presents right now, but as soon as I'm done, I'm off to listen to New Game on Flame with a nice hot brew. Now you have yourselves a very jolly Christmas and a Happy New Year, and I will see you all really soon.
Hello everyone, it is Saturday the 24th of December 2022. We are here, woohoo! It's nearly Christmas. Hello Diego.
Hello everyone.
How's it going over there?
Quite okay, well, not counting the obvious hectic time before Christmas, all the preparations.
Which we should come to now.
Yes, right, Briley Witch Chronicles is very much a classic Japanese-style RPG game. So think about Final Fantasy, Zelda series of games, and you get a pretty good idea about what Briley Witch Chronicle is, but it's for the Commodore 64. And I don't remember many other RPGs of this style made for the Commodore 64 before. So the game is already about a year old, was written by Sarah Jane Avery in 2021, and then I think it also got a few updates in the meantime. So the game has evolved slightly, perhaps incorporating some feedback from players. And as a Japanese style RPG, it's a lot about the story to discover. It's a lot about the characters and their dialogues. And there are quests, obviously, there is locations to explore, and there are battles to fight. And these are always in the form of turn-based battles, so you have all the time to think about what's gonna be the action of your character or characters, since you can also incorporate other characters occasionally during the story. There is no movement to worry about also during the battles, so it's more like a contest of actions between the two sides. I'd say that the story is very much the key of this game, and it's not just any story. The game is based on Sarah Jane Avery's own novels, also known with the name of Briley Witch Chronicles. I think she wrote about 10 of them. Not sure if she has already published all 10. Not completely sure. This game is supposed to cover the first few novels. And in fact, I even think that she has been planning to make more episodes also of Briley Witch Chronicles in the game format. I'm not gonna tell too many spoilers here because really you should really enjoy the story as it develops yourself, but I can tell you at least what is the theme about. So as it's a little bit given away by the title itself, but nevertheless it's all about witches, and it's the story of Briley, the main character. This happens at the very beginning, so it's not much of a spoiler to say, who is a woman who gets somehow transported into another world, and there she discovers that in this world there is magic, and perhaps she can also do some of it. Her main concern is how to get back to her original world, but this is going to take a very long time to figure out how. And in the meantime, there is a lot of magical stuff to discover and learn. But she's not alone. She's got a pal in the form of her own cat, who also got transported in this other world. And she soon finds out that she can actually speak with her cat. Smokey is the name of the cat. And so he becomes her main friend and support. And it also works as a sense, as a little bit as a tutorial for the game, how the game works, and also as a reminder of what are your quests, for example. Overall, this takes place in a very large map, different areas to explore. It can in fact be confusing, and I must say that I found myself having to draw out the map on a piece of paper, because at the beginning I was constantly getting lost between different locations. And so that's in a nutshell how the game is gonna play. But there are a myriad of details to enjoy as they gradually are introduced into the game. That is something very important in the mechanics of this game, that it starts small, and as you proceed, new things come up, new things you maybe weren't expecting.
Yeah, sure. So on the Commodore 64, noticeably you have one fire button only, so that is what you use to interact with most things. So you press a button and you find a herb, you go next to it, you press a button, and Briley will collect that herb. You go near a person and you press the fire button, and Briley will interact and talk with that particular character. But then on the keyboard you have also the back button on the Commodore 64. With the backspace you can access the UI, the menu, and inside there you have different options for items and equipping the items, and it usually works like a tree. So you press items, for example, and then you are presented with a list of people that are in your party right then, and you can give the items to those people. That's generally the idea behind how it works. And then equipping is pretty much similar. So you choose who to equip to, and then you can go through the items that you've got, and it will tell you if you can equip them or not to that particular person.
Yes, that's right. I think that it's more complicated to explain it with words than to use it, because I find it very intuitive, the UI, even though there's lots of writings on the screen in the menu and such. But overall, despite the fact that there are lots of details, each one is pretty simple by itself. So you mentioned the equipment part. So you can find various objects in the story that are going to help you. You can find weapons, obviously. You can find something that defends you. It could be an armor or a shield or something like that. You can find some magic object that gives you some extra powers. And they kind of have their own slot. So you can equip maybe one weapon, one defense item, one magical item, and such. So it's pretty simple after all. There are even little things that help you, like you can easily preview if you would change the weapon, how much your attack would improve, for example. And I really find it nice how everything really works with one button, or two, because there is also the going back button, but that's it. You do not need anything else. Everything is under control with a single button, and that's really nice. And now, at the risk of doing a little spoiler here, although it's quite early in the game, but what do you think? My favorite absolute thing to manage was the grimoire or spellbook. What did you think about that?
I don't know what you mean by manage the book.
Well, I mean how to use it.
Well, my understanding of the book is that if you gain a spell, it ends up in the book, and then you can read it there. Is that wrong?
Yeah, that's right. But I really like the idea that it's a little bit occasional how you get a new spell, and then you're supposed to go and take a look at the grimoire, what has appeared on it, and read the instruction of the spell. Well, that's not very complicated instructions. Usually it's for example, a sort of damage, and does it work on a single target, or does it work on as an area spell, so affects multiple targets. But every time I got new spells, it was always like an exciting moment. Wanted to go there and check it out and see what's the next thing I can do, either in a battle or outside of a battle, something like that.
Well, I didn't experience that in the same way, so what I did was simply when I gained a new spell, then I just couldn't wait to try and use it and see what the effects were rather than going on the grimoire. I did it a bit differently.
Okay. You mentioned that in this whole menu, you effectively can manage multiple characters at the same time.
Yeah.
In most cases in this game, it's Briley and Smokey the cat. Sometimes Smokey gets a day off, or anyway it goes on its own errands for a little bit and you might be alone, but most of the time it's the two of you. However, there are different parts of the story during which someone else joins the party, and at that time you can also equip them with some items you might have found somewhere to help them help you in the battles especially. It's very nice because to me it reminds me about classic RPG games, that it's more about a party of characters rather than just one.
Yeah, I thought that was quite nice when other NPCs, I call them, then come and be part of your group and go into adventures and find monsters, and I think that's quite a nice mechanic.
What was your favorite character?
I quite like the blacksmith.
Okay.
He's quite funny, I thought. And then at a certain point he comes in to save Briley, but I won't say too much, and
Right.
I don't know, I just envisaged him like a Highland blacksmith with a really tight accent. And that's the thing I like about this game, is reading the text of all this RPG or all these dialogues. You are the one who are making up the voices in your head. It's a bit like the text adventures once more. It's a bit your imagination comes in and makes the characters more real, even if they're 4 dots on the screen.
Yes, that's right.
In fact, I was imagining him a bit like Pix's voice, if that makes any sense.
That's nice. Well, I would say that, in my opinion, well, of course, Smokey the cat is the winner among all the characters of the game. I think that was just an amazing character. It's funny, tongue-in-cheek, if that's the right expression for it. And I like how it interacts with Briley, just starting talking on his own volition every now and then. It helps the story goes, and I like the fact that there's this little option where if you forget what's your current quest, there's a remind option, and usually it's you asking Smokey the cat, what are we supposed to do now? What were we doing at this time? But I also like the character of Clarissa.
Oh yeah,
she's the main quest giver, and at some point I just like how you go around, you break powerful curses, you confront epic spirits, you run away from a witch hunt, and she just gives you more and more bread to deliver because she's got a business to run,
Yeah, no time to waste with witchcraft at all.
But I think that's a lot of nice dialogues. There are quite a lot of dialogues, to be honest, and more than I was expecting. But it's always quite pleasant to read them, and well, you can tell that Sarah Jane Avery is also a writer, a novel writer, and not just a computer programmer. You can tell by the quality of these dialogues and the story and everything.
I was a bit confused at how. So, as a small, it's not really a spoiler because this is actually happens at the beginning of the game, and you cannot do anything about it. But I found it always quite odd to how Briley accepts the fact that she's a Theo, or how you read it, I don't know, which is basically a slave.
Mm-hmm.
and someone says to her, either you're a slave, and she's like, yeah, all right, I'm a slave. I was like, but she's coming from a modern age, and I couldn't wrap my head around how easily that went through.
Well, but she's kind of trapped in this world, and doesn't have much choice at the beginning but to accept that, otherwise she would be in even more danger from the others, not so friendly characters.
Yeah.
Speaking of quests, what was your opinion? How did you find the quests in general in this story?
I think the quests were quite trivial, not excessively difficult, which was quite nice. They became a bit repetitive. You would go and give the bread or go and talk to someone, and you'd have to find your way through the whole map. Later on during the game, I think also there are some shortcuts on the map that open up so you can actually travel to one location to another way faster, which is really good. Props for that. So the quests for me were really straightforward, as I said, and I think they were all pleasantly intertwined with other things that were going on. So if I would deliver some bread, someone would talk to me about something else that would be interesting for me, and I would have to do that quest as well. So it was like a quest initiator in some respect. At a certain point though, you do your own activities outside the quest time, and you get given permission, I think. So that's quite nice as well. But at the end, you go home, you sleep the next day, go out with the bread again. So I think it's pretty straightforward, and I think that's a positive. I wouldn't like too convoluted quests in this game, especially me. I'm a noob. I'm a virgin of RPG. This is my first RPG that I have ever tried, so unable to compare it to anything else.
Right. If you like the straightforwardness, is that even a word, of Briley Witch Chronicles, I will then ask you in a few weeks how you feel about Baldur's Gate, because in terms of mixing up different quests and crossing over between quests, I think Baldur's Gate, it's really a web of quests. So it's a lot more complex than this. But since you mentioned you're now going to play that as well, I will ask you in a while how you feel about it.
Can you give me a comparison to Briley Witch's quest and Baldur's Gate quest to WoW quests? Because I've done loads of WoW quests.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you about the Briley's quests. They are very straightforward and simple, and I kind of think they are a little bit of an excuse for something else in the story to pop up. So, as you mentioned, many quests are just about delivering your bread to the customers. There's not much of a quest really, but something's gonna happen between the time you leave the bakery and you reach the destination, and that's the real point, just to trigger a new event in the story. So in Baldur's Gate, you don't get a linear feeling at all. I think Briley's pretty linear. There's actually a day-night cycle. We haven't mentioned it, but you are going to need to get some rest to replenish your life, and later on your spell. And this day and night cycle is always tied to the quests that you're doing. So at some point it's time to go to bed, and you just go to bed. You can't deviate too much from this linear evolution or sequence of quests. Whereas Baldur's Gate, in my opinion, it's a lot more like a sandbox. You go around. Obviously not every location is available since the beginning, but you can kind of roam around the map and visit different places, and you have potentially lots of quests open at the same time. That you might start a quest and then do 10 other quests before you finish the first, and they are also very interconnected. So I'd say that if Briley's quests follow a line, Baldur's Gate's quests form a web. You really can take lots of paths. You don't even have to finish many of the quests. many of those are completely optional. You can just ignore them if you don't like that story at all, or if you don't figure out how to finish them.
It sounds a bit like WoW, basically, Baldur's Gate.
I found that Baldur's Gate is more deeply into the quests than World of Warcraft. At the end of the day, World of Warcraft quests always seem the same to me. It's always about get a certain number of items, or kill a certain number of monsters, or go from one place to another, or deliver this item to this other character. And so it's very open, yes, so you can take many directions, you can visit a new area and completely ignore another if you're not interested. So in terms of openness, probably Baldur's Gate and World of Warcraft are both pretty open, and World of Warcraft even more. But in terms of variety of quests, I think Baldur's Gate still wins. In my opinion, it just gives me the feeling of a lot more things going on in the world than just killing monsters and collect whatever they drop.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to trying a bit of variety for sure.
What about battles? How did you like the battles?
Battles were quite straightforward as well, to be honest. You don't have to move in the battles. So you are presented with two sides, so your side, your party, versus the enemies. And at the top, you can choose beforehand at every turn what each member of your party does. And you can do so with a very, very straightforward interface. It's made by icons, but they're very intuitive. One is a sword, which clearly attack. I think another one is the magic, and another one is the pouch. If you've got an item to give or whatnot, you can use that. You have defend as well, so you can put your character into defense mode and it will receive less damage. And then if it's available, you can also flee the combat. So those are the 5 commands that I saw. And there's a macro as well, to be honest, that I have not used yet, but you can make macros with the combat. And essentially all you do is give each one of your party members the instruction to what to do, or to attack or to defend, and to who. Once you've finished, they all start their actions, and they have their turn and they perform the actions against the enemy, and the enemy then has their turn. That's very simple, and I found myself learning that really fast and getting through them really quickly. I think also the system is very smart. So if you give some instructions, for example, the cat has to kill an enemy, but someone has already killed that enemy, then automatically that attack is redirected on any remaining target, which is, I think, very, very smart. I wasn't expecting that, to be honest. I just thought it wouldn't attack anything, but it did. What did you think?
I have to say that this is not my absolute favorite type of battle mechanic, mainly because while I really actually do like turn-based combat, I like the possibility that I can stop and think what is the best action to do. Maybe because I come from playing tabletop roleplay games like Dungeons and Dragons, so it's your turn, you can think about everything you can do in your turn, everybody else has to wait. I really like turn-based battles, but in these Japanese style RPGs, I miss the lack of movement. Well, now, how do I say it? I miss the movement. You can't really move around the area in a fight. So everybody is whatever they are, and you only choose attack or defense action or magic action. That makes it like not my very favorite. So if you're gonna play Baldur's Gate, that's not even exactly a turn-based game, but you probably don't want to play it in real time, because that's very, very difficult and very, very unwieldy, so to speak. So you can play with auto pose, and then it's almost turn-based, with the exceptions that sometimes some character gets to play, say, twice rather than the others. But you can move, you have to also manage the movement and the positioning and the directions, and that would be my absolute favorite. But I'm aware of the fact that this is one of the most commonly appreciated type of battle mechanics. All those Japanese style RPG work like this. So nevertheless, I think it's quite enjoyable, even this no movement turn-based. And at the beginning of the game, it kind of feels, as you said, repetitive, but that's because you do not have that many options yet. At the very, very beginning, you have one weapon and nothing else. So either you use the weapon or you flee the battle. Or well, there's a defensive option too, but I haven't yet figured out exactly when am I supposed to really use the defensive option, because that means you minimize the damage you are taking, but you are not attacking. And you obviously you can't just do that forever, because eventually you lose all your life and you'll never win the battle. So I'm still not sure how to use the defensive option properly. But anyway, as you progress in the game, you get many different options that are not just one weapon. You get your spells, and you get different spells that have different effects. Not all of them are attack spells, some are defensive spells, and then
some of them are healing
the
spells.
battles, healing spells, for example, or there are spells that can boost one of your character in some way, make them more agile, for example, something like that. So then it becomes more tactical. Then you can have more fun, because every turn you can think about what is the most convenient action to take, and you also have to think about how much it costs, because spells do not all have the same cost. There are better spells, but they cost more, and you have a limited amount of magical energy before you run out of it. So overall, I think it's pretty nice. It's just at the very beginning of the game where things aren't that developed yet, and your options are a little bit too limited. But once you're past that phase, it's quite a nice tactical way of representing a battle.
For me, Baldur's Gate probably is a bit too much, so I'm thinking for someone who's not so hardcore like yourself, this sort of battle mechanics is much better suited, so it would be quicker. I remember when I was playing this particularly, it was very easy for me to choose, combat and or defense or whatever, and magic spell. Now, apparently there are magic spells that are more effective on certain enemies and less effective on others, and vice versa. I found that physically attacking some goals, I think wasn't very effective, but spells were very effective on them. But it's very quick, and you don't have to think too much. If you know what you're doing, once you've learned the UI and how it works, it is very fast to get through a battle.
Well, another big favorite part of the game for me was the recipes or rituals. I don't know how to call them, but you have the possibility after some point to actually create potions, for example, and not only potions, by mixing ingredients.
Yeah.
And I think I've seen a few games in the far past that used that idea, and it was always quite fascinating to me, because on one hand, first of all, there's the fact you have to discover this recipe, usually through the story. Then you have to harvest the component. So you might take it might take you somewhere around the map to find the right plant or mushroom or something else that you need to harvest, and in a certain amount of doses before you can complete that recipe. And there's also a few things that are not that obvious how you get them. You need to get them in a more special way But this is always very nice. Once you discover a recipe, you can do it as many times as you want, as long as you have the ingredients. It always makes me wonder what is going to be the next one to discover. So I hope there's plenty more to discover where I am currently now from the game, because I haven't got tired of new recipes.
I did read the grimoire, but I don't recall there being explained which spells are better against what, for example, or which are the better healing potions, etc. The problem that I found, in fact, today was that I couldn't get past a certain level and I needed to get more potions, really. So I thought, I can't make it because I don't have enough equipment or good enough equipment, or for some reason these enemies are too hard for me. So the only way I can win this for now, because I don't have any more progress in the story, is that I completely submerge myself in potions, in healing potions, so I can just keep healing. So I did try and make a lot of potions, but there was a specific herb that I could not find anywhere, and I don't remember where it is. So I did then have to go back and look at the manual and a little bit of help online to find out that that's where that particular herb was growing. But the problem was that it wasn't there right then, so I would have to wait for it to spawn. But I couldn't go to sleep, so I find myself in this really bizarre place where I couldn't get any more potion, but I couldn't progress in the story because I kept losing these battles. It's a very unique combination, but eventually you manage. I managed, not in the way that I was trying to, but in a different way because of your help, I think you gave me. But I'll talk about this afterwards. I just wanted to mention about, finding the correct ingredients, and not always they're available. Most of them are, like the mint and the cat mint, I think it's called. But some of them, you have to wait some time for them to spawn.
I think that they are basically tied to the day-night cycle. I'm not completely sure, but I think that once you harvest a plant, you'll need to wait until the next day before it's back. And I did notice there's a couple of points in the story where it's a bit dangerous. Some areas that you need to get out before you can eventually go back to your home and sleep, and therefore replenish your own magical powers and life force, and also cause the respawning of all the plants in the map. And if you happen to be in that area with low resources, low life, low magic, low ingredients, it is a bit dangerous. So I would recommend it. I think I noticed it a couple of times at the point where I reached in the game. So I recommend to save the game often. I keep my slots saved all the time cyclically so that I could go back a little more, or even a day before, because the day-night cycle seems to be quite important to me. That night rest is what replenishes everything about you.
Yeah.
Even though there are also complications. Sometimes you go to sleep and something unexpected happens. You might get stuck in your own nightmare, for example.
I don't know, have you seen there's a recipe in the grimoire that does something strange? Like, it just says you'll be caught into something that you've never seen, or something along those lines. It's got a very strange name.
I think you are talking about my favorite recipe.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah, but that's pretty much a very special one that it's not as a utility that you would cast that spell. It's really to trigger an important new piece of the story to unfold. It's the one that you have to do at the cauldron, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it has a very strange name, and it kind of creates a vision of possible future.
Yeah.
And every time it's a different one, because it's very much story based. So it's a really a spell of its own, and not something that you just use it because it's useful, but you have to maybe figure out when it's the right time to do it, because if you just do it for the sake of doing it, it might not tell you anything, might not show you anything. But usually you get a clue like that now it's the time to take a look at the next vision, and you have to do that spell at the cauldron. I think it's brilliant, actually.
For me, I've never played an RPG, so because I've never liked certain aspects of it. And yes, those aspects are still in this game, so I'm not massively impressed with those particular ones. But generally, I quite liked it, to be honest. It was throughout. It's been a pleasant experience.
Yeah, I really appreciated this game on so many levels. I mean, the technically speaking, I'd say it's practically flawless. It's a great use of the Commodore 64 limited resources, but the music it's really great in my opinion, and the graphics is appropriately nice. The controls, in my opinion, are the best thing, because really you are practically doing everything, all this stuff, with one button or two if you consider also the button to go back. But that's it. It's very distilled in the perfect way. And yet the game has a myriad of details, lots of ideas, different mechanics, a wonderful story. So wow, I was really impressed. And even though, as I said, the Japanese style battles in particular are not my favorite, but well, doesn't matter at this point. It's already a lot more than that I would ask from a game for Commodore 64, really.
Well, why don't we read what one of our listeners has written in? So Pix it is again, which has apparently finished the game, so hats off to him once more. Anyways, he writes in, my first impression were just how well Briley Witch Chronicles plays off a cartridge. RPGs on the C64 make me think of Ultima 5's constant disc swapping and loading. We should have been using this tech back then. As for the game, it's very charming and engaging. Anyone who has played the Final Fantasy on the NES will immediately feel at home, even if the plotline is highly unusual for an RPG. I've never read them, but I was surprised how well the original books appear to have been adapted to the RPG form. The story very much drives the experience, with the combat and the exploration offering just enough challenge to keep things interesting. It was never overly difficult, and I wouldn't want it to have been for a game like this. I gather from Rushi, sorry, I don't know how you pronounce it properly, that earlier versions were much less forgiving, but the version I played appeared perfectly judged to avoid frustration. Biggest downside is that there isn't enough music. The same ominous tune every time something bad happens gets old quickly. Also, the novelty of the whole experience was wearing a little thin after the 15 or so hours I took to beat the game. There is only just enough variety to maintain interest for all that time. The sequels, if they come, will need to do something new with this formula, and those are minor quibbles though. I had a great time with Briley Witch Chronicles, and overall this may just be my favourite game on the podcast so far. Wow, what a compliment.
Thank you, Pix.
So, do you agree a bit with what Pix has said?
I think that's pretty good food for thoughts, at least.
Yeah.
Good insight, yes.
So, for me, I am thinking, music-wise, I thought music was really nice. The experience from the start, especially when I first booted it up, I was really impressed by the polish and how the game starts with a little intro instead of having the title at the very beginning, unlike basically 99% of the titles on the Commodore 64 used to do. So that was really refreshing. The writing was really good. I don't tend to read a lot of stuff, so I'm not a massive reader. And that's why also I'm not a fan of RPGs, but because the writing was quite simple and it wasn't overly convoluted, it was well done. I managed to keep my span of attention quite close, so I managed to get engaged a bit more in the plot. And I always like when there is some time traveling involved and stuff of that kind. So it did pique my interest, so I managed to get involved in that. Some aspects, as I mentioned previously, how quickly she adapts to be a slave, I was a bit surprised of, but I accepted in the end. And I like how the characters were built, like you said, Clarissa, the blacksmith, and Sebastian, and the family that don't really like witches. I like the portraits, I like the graphics as well. They're very simple. I think the map is quite cute as well, so I found a version of the map online and I thought that was pretty good, and like it looks really nice and well drawn, like a little gnome village in some ways. And also the sprites are quite different from each other, I mean, in a relative way, you know, how it can be. So overall, very good. I didn't see the music didn't really grow old on me as it did for Pix. But one thing I've always loathed of all these RPGs are the random encounters. Dun dun dun. I hate the random encounters in a way that you cannot imagine.
Okay.
So I try all the ways possible, right, to evade, and if I can not do the battle, I will skip it. But if I can't, I try with my keyboard to make random movements with a character in the screen so it doesn't trigger a random encounter. I don't know if it works, but I just press really quickly the arrows like that and see. Hopefully it doesn't trigger a random encounter. But yeah, I don't like them. If there was more story-driven encounters, that would have been so much better. But I do understand you do need them to create and evolve your character. Personally, the way you evolve your character is not so obvious. So when I did these battles, I just saw life force +4, skill +1, but it never really gave me any idea that I was progressing my character in any way. I think that was probably a little downside for me. I haven't finished it. I'm not sure I will, but I will give it my best shot when I've got some time. I know later on in the game there's places where you can buy weaponry, etc. And I would have liked that to be maybe unlocked a bit sooner. There are some areas where it seems that the difficulty ramps up really quickly, so enemies that beforehand used to hit me for 1 or 2, 3 hit points weren't there anymore, and in their place immediately and other different enemies that would hit me for 14 and 20, and there was no middle ground, so I found myself a bit like, ooh, short-handed there. But maybe that was probably more my problem, how I was playing the game. So Diego, would you recommend this game?
Absolutely, totally yes. I think this has the potential to become a new modern classic for the Commodore 64, really. If it isn't already, because I think it already has quite a good share of fans around the world.
Yeah, and it's won multiple awards as well, I think.
And in addition, I must say that I really hope to see episode 2 and maybe 3 also coming out eventually.
Yeah.
So that it would cover the whole story arc of Sergeant Avery's novels.
I think it's on the same level. I found it really entertaining, even if I'm not a fan of the genre. I really enjoyed it. I would like to find the time to finish it, and I definitely think it's worth the minimum. I think it is $10 that Sarah Jane asks for this game, and for a game this big and this complex and this well written and made, I think it's absolutely nothing. So I highly recommend you go and check it out on itch.io. I think it is. You can find Sarah Jane, but any Google of her name and surname will bring you to Briley Witch. And by the way, I really love the title screen. Again, it's really well drawn. Merry Christmas to everyone, and if you want to write to us, you can write to us at game@newgameoldflame.com. You can find us on the Discord server by going on our website www.newgameoldflame.com, and then click on the Discord link and you'll get into the server. If you're a listener of Retro Asylum, which you should be by now, you can find us in their server on the New Game Old Flame channel. Write to us with any questions or any contributions you want to give. And for now, I think we'll check out and go and open our presents. And see you soon. Have a nice holiday.
And happy gaming, everyone.
Blitzen! Where have you gone? Did I hear that reindeer? Might have gone to play stable tennis again.